What happens when a beloved global icon like Hugh Jackman walks onto the set of The View expecting a warm conversation, only to be dragged into a moral confrontation that pushes him to his emotional edge? The lights inside the studio glowed with a soft amber warmth, the kind that usually made the atmosphere feel inviting, almost comforting. But on this day, something in the air felt charged, like static right before a storm. You could sense it even before Hugh Jackman took his first step onto the stage. The audience erupted in applause as he walked out, smiling that signature humble smile, waving politely, taking his seat as if everything was perfectly normal. But even he felt it. A subtle tension he couldn't quite explain. Sunny Hostin leaned forward at the table, hands folded, eyes sharp with a focus that didn't match the cheerful tone of the segment's opening. Whoopi offered a warm greeting. Joy cracked a joke that landed unevenly with the crowd. But Sunny, she watched Hugh with an intensity that made the other hosts shift in their seats. Hugh adjusted his chair slightly, offering her a courteous nod. "Always great to be here," he said, voice warm, genuine. He had no idea what awaited him. The first few minutes felt smooth enough. Talk of his new project, anecdotes from his past work, laughter from the audience, all the familiar beats of a typical television interview. But beneath it all, there was an undercurrent, something rising, inch by inch, toward the surface. And when Sunny finally leaned in with the kind of calm seriousness she was known for just before asking something big, Hugh's smile dimmed just a little. "So Hugh," she began slowly, her voice steady but edged with something deeper. "You've always talked about kindness, about leading with compassion, and that's wonderful. But I'm curious about where you stand when morality gets complicated." The audience quieted instantly. Hugh blinked, processing. "Complicated how?" Sunny tilted her head, her tone deceptively gentle. "Let's say someone close to you makes a decision you believe is wrong. Not just questionable, wrong. Do you stay loyal? Do you defend them? Or do you hold firm to your own moral standard, even if it means standing alone?" A ripple moved through the studio. You could feel the shift. Hugh took a slow breath, not expecting such a blunt dive into ethics. "Well," he said carefully, "I think love and loyalty matter. But so does conviction. So you try to guide them with honesty. But what if honesty isn't enough?" Sunny cut in, her voice rising slightly. "What if they continue doing something you believe is harmful? Do you walk away? Do you stay and enable it? I mean, at what point does loyalty become moral compromise?" Hugh's posture stiffened, not much, but enough to be noticed. Joy raised a brow. Whoopi glanced briefly at Sunny, as if trying to gauge where this was going. The audience murmured, sensing the conversation slipping into unfamiliar territory. Hugh cleared his throat. "I think relationships are built on trust and understanding. You can disagree with someone's choices, but even if those choices are fundamentally wrong." Sunny pushed. "Even if staying silent makes you complicit." The word complicit struck like a chord. The air snapped tight. Hugh's eyes softened, but something behind them flickered. Maybe confusion, maybe frustration. He wasn't used to being backed into a moral corner on national television. "Sunny," he said gently, "are we talking hypothetically, or is there something specific you're referring to?" The audience oozed quietly. A few gasps broke through. Sunny didn't blink. "Hypothetical, but real enough. These questions matter. People look up to you. They follow the example you set. So do you choose loyalty, or do you choose right?" The silence that followed seemed to vibrate. Hugh didn't immediately respond. He was choosing his words with the precision of a man who understood the weight of each one. "I believe," he finally said, voice calm but with an unmistakable firmness, "that every situation demands empathy. You can disagree with someone, you can challenge them, you can even stand apart from them. But you don't throw people away just because they are struggling or because they've lost their way. Sometimes the moral choice isn't walking away. It's staying, listening, trying to help them grow." Sunny leaned back slowly, expression unreadable. But the tension in her jaw betrayed something simmering underneath. "So loyalty over morality," she pressed. "No," Hugh countered immediately. "Loyalty with morality. Without compassion, morality becomes judgment. And without morality, loyalty becomes blind." That line hit hard. Even the audience reacted with a low hum of impressed murmurs. But Sunny didn't ease up. If anything, she leaned in farther, as if she felt she hadn't gotten the answer she came for. "But what if someone refuses to change?" she asked, voice rougher now, pushing the edge. "What if their actions continue hurting people? Do you still stay by their side?" Hugh's brows furrowed subtly. "I think people can change. Sometimes it takes time. And sometimes they don't, Sunny shot back. The temperature in the studio rose. You could practically hear hearts beating faster. Hugh exhaled slowly, controlled but visibly tensed. Sunny, I understand the point you're making. But I don't believe in abandoning people at their lowest. Even when they fail, even when they disappoint you, it doesn't mean they are beyond redemption. Sunny's voice dropped to a low, precise tone. And what if standing by them makes you part of the problem? The audience gasped. Hugh's jaw tightened ever so slightly. He wasn't angry, not yet, but he was clearly being pushed into a difficult emotional corner. I think that's a very harsh way to frame loyalty, he said softly. Trying to help someone is not the same as enabling them. Sunny did not look convinced. And that was the moment the room shifted, from a challenging conversation to something charged, personal, electric. Hugh's eyes narrowed just a fraction, his voice steady but deeper, anchored with quiet conviction. Sunny, he said, I believe in standing up for what's right. But I also believe in standing with people when they are struggling. That isn't complicity. That's compassion. The air felt like it was pulsing. Joy looked between them like she was watching a storm form. Whoopi leaned back in her chair, lips pressed together. The audience sat frozen, locked into the tension consuming the room. But Sunny wasn't done. Not even close. Hugh, she said quietly, sometimes compassion becomes a shield people hide behind to avoid taking a moral stand. And that was the line that finally made Hugh's expression shift. Just slightly, but unmistakably. A spark. A warning. A man being pushed 1 inch too far. The studio felt like it had stopped breathing. Hugh Jackman's gaze settled on Sunny Hostin with a new level of focus, stern but controlled, as though he had finally realized this conversation wasn't merely philosophical. It felt targeted, personal, and he wasn't sure why. Sunny, Hugh said calmly, you're suggesting compassion is an excuse. It isn't. It's a choice. A hard one. Sunny didn't flinch. Hard choices are still choices, she replied. And too many people hide behind kindness to avoid confronting wrongdoing. You talk about redemption, but sometimes redemption requires consequences. Real consequences. Not a gentle hand. The audience began murmuring. A few nodded along with Sunny. Others looked uncomfortable, unsure whether they were witnessing a meaningful discussion or something far deeper, far more emotional, unfolding between the lines. Hugh sat back slightly, folding his hands. His jaw flexed once, an almost imperceptible sign of restraint. I hear what you're saying, he said slowly. But compassion and consequences aren't opposites. You can hold someone accountable without abandoning them. Sunny exhaled sharply through her nose, crossing her arms. But do you? Do you actually hold people accountable? Or do you stay loyal because it's easier than confronting the truth about someone you care about? A tremor of shock moved through the crowd. This was no longer hypothetical. She had crossed into the unmistakably personal. Hugh didn't respond right away. He blinked once, as if trying to understand whether he had misheard. Are you implying I've ignored wrongdoing? He asked softly. I'm asking if your loyalty ever blinds you, Sunny clarified, but her tone had tightened, and the tension between them had gravity now, pulling the entire room toward this emotional collision neither had planned but both were locked into. Whoopi lifted a hand gently. Sunny, let me jump in. But Sunny wasn't done. No, because this matters, she added, keeping her eyes locked on Hugh. You have a massive platform. People look up to you. And your brand is all about compassion and forgiveness. That's wonderful, most of the time. But there are moments when forgiveness becomes a way to avoid confrontation. Hugh's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something wounded, something reflective. I confront things, he said, voice low. I just don't believe every battle requires a war. That sounds nice, Sunny replied, but real life isn't always neat. Sometimes, taking a stand means you lose people. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you. And compassion doesn't. Hugh asked. The two stared at each other in a heavy silence. The audience was so still, the whir of the stage lights became audible. Finally, Hugh leaned forward, his tone gentle but unwavering. Tell me something, Sunny. Do you believe loyalty is weakness? I believe blind loyalty is, she returned. And how do you decide when loyalty becomes blind? He challenged. Sunny hesitated, but only for a fraction of a second. When it stops protecting the people who are being hurt. A wave of silent tension crashed through the studio. Hugh nodded slowly. I agree, he said. But you're assuming loyalty and silence are the same. They are not. Sometimes the most loyal thing you can do is quietly work with someone to help them see their mistake. Not shame them. Not cut them off. Not broadcast their failures. Sunny didn't look away. And sometimes the quiet route doesn't work. Maybe not at first, Hugh conceded. But you don't give up on people unless they give up on themselves. Sunny pressed her lips together, her eyes briefly glinting with something sharper. Pain, perhaps, or frustration. Whatever it was, it fueled the next question. Do you think everyone deserves redemption? She asked, tone lower, weightier. Every single person. Hugh paused. The question hit him with unexpected force. Not because it was philosophical, but because it carried a shadow deeper than anything they had discussed so far. I think redemption has to be available, he answered quietly. Otherwise we're saying some lives are unfixable. And I don't believe that. Sunny leaned back, folding her arms. Some people don't change, Hugh. I know, he said. And some refuse to, she added. I know, he repeated, softer this time. So why stay loyal to people who hurt others? Hugh's breath shifted. His chest rose, then fell slowly. For the first time, he looked not just challenged, but emotionally caught off guard. Because sometimes, he said, voice rougher than before, the reason they hurt others is because they are hurting themselves. The audience reacted instantly. Soft gasps, murmurs, the unmistakable sound of emotional resonance rippling across the studio. Sunny blinked, her expression momentarily shaken, as if that line hit a nerve she hadn't expected to expose. Joy cleared her throat. This is getting deep, she muttered, half joking, half concerned. But neither Hugh nor Sunny looked away. Sunny leaned forward again, elbows on the table, voice steady. But where does that leave the people they've hurt? Are they supposed to wait patiently while someone finds themselves? Are they supposed to be collateral damage for someone else's journey? Hugh's eyes softened. Pain flickered there, real pain. Of course not. But abandoning someone doesn't undo the harm. Punishment alone doesn't heal anyone. Sunny's voice dropped even lower. So what heals them? Understanding, Hugh answered. Boundaries. Support. And yes, sometimes forgiveness. Sometimes that's not enough, Sunny whispered. Hugh's voice steadied, warm but unyielding. Sometimes nothing is. But you still try. Sunny's jaw tightened. The conversation was no longer about abstract morality. It had become an emotional battlefield. Let me ask you something, Sunny said. If someone you care about does something you believe is wrong, deeply wrong, do you call them out? Directly. To their face. Hugh didn't hesitate. Yes. And if they deny it? I'd try again, he said. And again. As many times as it takes. And if they never admit they are wrong? He took a long, slow breath, eyes fixed on her. Then I would step back. I wouldn't abandon them forever. But I would stop enabling the behavior. Sunny went still. Hugh continued, voice steady but trembling at the edges with emotion. Walking away and abandoning someone aren't the same thing. One is a boundary. The other is punishment. The audience hummed again. Sunny swallowed slowly. Interesting distinction. It matters, Hugh said. Sunny's lips parted slightly, as though she wanted to respond, but something stopped her. Something flickered behind her eyes, something unspoken and fragile. And then she said quietly, compassion is beautiful, Hugh. But sometimes compassion turns into an excuse to avoid seeing the truth. Hugh leaned in, and for the first time, his voice carried unmistakable steel beneath the softness. And sometimes, he said, people use morality to justify cruelty. Sunny froze. The audience went dead silent. You could feel the moment shift, like a storm cloud rolling overhead, darkening everything. Sunny's eyes narrowed, hurt, anger, confusion all spiraling underneath. Hugh didn't blink, and the temperature of the studio rose by 10 degrees. Because Sunny Hostin had just been challenged in a way she did not expect. The studio atmosphere didn't just shift, it cracked. You could feel the fracture, sharp and sudden, like the moment a glass slips in someone's hand and everyone waits to see whether it will shatter. Sunny Hostin's expression hardened, but beneath the firmness, something vulnerable flashed, something she tried desperately to suppress. Hugh Jackman, usually the embodiment of calm diplomacy, sat with shoulders slightly squared, gaze steady, unblinking, as if he'd finally decided he couldn't retreat from this emotional confrontation anymore. The silence was heavy, throbbing. The audience felt it. The hosts felt it. Hugh felt it most of all. Joy broke the quiet first, attempting to soothe the moment with levity. Well, That's one way to heat up morning television, she joked, forcing a small laugh. But the tension didn't budge. Not even slightly. Sunny inhaled deeply, clasping her hands tightly enough that her knuckles showed white. Cruelty, she repeated slowly, her voice quiet but stabbed through with an incredulous edge. You think pointing out harm is cruelty? I think how you point it out matters, he replied, soft but unwavering. Intent matters. Tone matters. Timing matters. And compassion isn't weakness. Sunny's stare sharpened. And morality isn't cruelty. Of course not, Hugh agreed. But moral certainty can become a weapon if you don't wield it with empathy. That line cut through the air like a clean blade, precise, measured, unforgettable. Sunny's breath hitched, only for a fraction of a second. So you're saying I'm, what? Harsh. Self-righteous. I'm saying, Hugh answered carefully, that sometimes we become so focused on being right that we forget the humanity of the person we're judging. Sunny leaned forward. And sometimes people hide behind humanity to avoid acknowledging the damage they've caused. Hugh's eyes flickered, hurt, frustration, and a simmering determination mingling. I'm not talking about ignoring damage. I'm talking about helping people heal. Sunny didn't blink. You think healing is always possible? Hugh hesitated for the first time. And that one pause, small, barely noticeable, was enough for Sunny to pounce. You think everyone can be healed. Everyone can be forgiven. Everyone deserves a second chance. Her voice trembled with intensity. But not everyone earns one, Hugh. The audience stirred, sensing the emotional threads pulling tight. Hugh straightened slightly, hands clasped loosely. That's the thing about forgiveness. It's not earned. Sunny's jaw dropped slightly. Excuse me. It's given, Hugh continued gently. And it frees the one who gives it as much as the one who receives it. For the first time, Whoopi leaned in. I think what Hugh is saying. But Sunny cut her off with a raised hand, her gaze locked onto Hugh with laser focus. Forgiveness without accountability is meaningless. And accountability without compassion becomes punishment, Hugh countered. Their voices overlapped slightly, breath against breath in the tight emotional space between them. Sunny's eyes glistened then, just barely, but she blinked it away as if refusing to let the audience see the weakness. You're idealistic, Hugh. Too idealistic. Life isn't a movie where everyone learns their lesson and apologizes in the final act. And life isn't a courtroom where everyone must be condemned before they can grow, Hugh replied. Sunny's chest rose sharply. You're defending people who hurt others. I'm defending the idea that people are more than their worst choices. You sound like someone who's been hurt, Sunny shot back, and the moment the words left her mouth, the studio gasped. Even she realized she'd crossed a line. Hugh's face didn't contort, didn't harden. But the hurt landed plainly in his eyes, raw and unguarded. He swallowed. Everyone's been hurt, Sunny. She looked away, jaw trembling for a split second. Hugh continued softly. But that pain, it doesn't have to turn into judgment. Sunny didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat tightened visibly, her fingers curling into her palms as if she needed something to hold on to. Hugh leaned forward slightly, voice gentle but resolute. Sunny, who are you really talking about? A ripple went through the studio, electric, breathless. The audience held onto the question like a live wire. Sunny blinked, hard. No one. But the crack in her voice betrayed the truth. Hugh softened. His posture eased. His voice lowered to something fragile but steady. This isn't about me, is it? Sunny's lips parted, but no words formed. The air between them pulsed. Joy looked genuinely concerned now. Sunny, maybe we should. But Sunny finally spoke, her tone brittle. I'm talking about principles. No, Hugh said softly. You're talking about someone who hurt you. Just like that, the studio froze. You could hear a pin drop. Even the cameras seemed to hum quieter. Sunny's composure fractured for half a second. Don't psychoanalyze me. I'm not, Hugh replied gently. I'm listening. Sunny's eyes glossed again before she blinked furiously. You think loyalty fixes everything. It doesn't. I know, Hugh said. But rejection breaks people. Sunny exhaled a shaky breath. And loyalty breaks others. Hugh nodded slowly. Both can be true. The audience murmured again. The tension had shifted, not explosive now, but emotional, fragile, trembling like a quiet earthquake beneath the table. Sunny's voice dropped. What if someone used your kindness against you? What if they took your loyalty and twisted it? What if you forgiving them only made it easier for them to hurt you again? Hugh paused, his face softening with an empathy so deep it made the moment ache. Then, he said softly, I would set boundaries. But I wouldn't hate them. Sunny's throat tightened. I didn't say hate. No, Hugh said gently, but I can hear the pain. Sunny's eyes widened, surprised, defensive, exposed. You don't know anything about my pain. I don't, Hugh acknowledged. And I'm not trying to. But I know what it feels like to hold onto something so tightly you forget why you're holding it. Sunny looked away again. Hugh continued. Letting go of anger doesn't mean letting go of yourself. Sunny shook her head, voice cracking. Sometimes you have to protect yourself. Always, Hugh said. But protection doesn't require shutting down your heart. Sunny swallowed hard, her breath uneven. Hugh leaned in gently. Who hurt you, Sunny? Sunny's breath caught, in her throat, in her chest, everywhere. Her eyes glistened again, but she shut them tight, holding onto her composure with trembling restraint. This isn't about me, she repeated, voice shattering around the edges. But Hugh already knew. And the entire audience knew too. It wasn't about hypotheticals. It wasn't about morality. It wasn't even about Hugh. This was about a wound Sunny Hostin had been carrying alone. A wound that had just been pushed into the light on national television. And when Sunny finally opened her eyes, there was something different there. Something rawer. Something dangerously close to breaking. The studio felt impossibly still, as though the air itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what Sunny Hostin would do with the wound Hugh Jackman had gently, painfully revealed. Her fingers trembled where they rested on the table, and for a moment she didn't look like the sharp, confident legal mind audiences knew. She looked human. Hurt. Torn between the instinct to protect herself and the pressure of millions watching her unravel in real time. Hugh's expression softened even further, an unspoken olive branch reaching across the space between them. He didn't push. He didn't prod. He simply waited, patient, steady, a safe place for her to land if she chose to. But Sunny wasn't ready to land. Not yet. She inhaled slowly, her breath shaky enough for the microphones to pick up the faint tremor. You don't understand, she said, almost in a whisper. Hugh nodded. You're right. I don't. But I'm not trying to judge you. Sunny's gaze darted toward him. Quick, sharp, like she was bracing for impact. I'm not asking for your sympathy. I'm not offering sympathy, he replied quietly. I'm offering understanding. Those words hit harder than anything he'd said the entire show. Sunny blinked fast, her composure wobbling like a tower in an earthquake. She looked away, shoulders rising as she tried to swallow the emotion threatening to break through her voice. Whoopi leaned in, her tone soft. Sunny, it's okay. But Sunny shook her head, eyes fixed on the table. No, it's not. This wasn't supposed to happen. Hugh tilted his head, voice gentle. Sometimes the conversations we don't plan are the ones we need the most. Sunny's lips trembled. You don't get it, she whispered. You don't know what people have done. What it's like when someone you trust, someone you would have defended endlessly, turns around and hurts you so deeply you don't even recognize them anymore. Hugh's eyes softened with deep empathy. You're right. I don't know your story. But I know pain. And I know carrying it alone makes it heavier. Sunny exhaled shakily, finally meeting his gaze. Loyalty is dangerous, she said. And isolation is worse, he replied gently. The studio was silent, absorbed. You could feel the audience rooting, not for a victory, not for a takedown, but for healing. There was something undeniably human in watching two people collide emotionally, then try to find their way back to understanding. Sunny's voice cracked. I held on to someone for too long. I believed they would change. I forgave every mistake, every excuse, every betrayal. And in the end, I paid the price. Her voice broke, just slightly, just enough for the truth to shine through. Hugh leaned forward, not intruding, simply present. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sunny looked at him, eyes swimming with a battle between vulnerability and pride. I can't let that happen again. And you shouldn't, Hugh said. But don't close off the part of you that can still see the good in people. Sunny stared at him, anger softening into something fragile. It feels safer. Temporary safety, Hugh murmured, at the cost of long-term peace. Sunny closed her eyes, a single breath shaking through her. And when she opened them, her expression had shifted, not healed, not resolved, but softened just enough that the tension began to dissipate from the room. Joy exhaled deeply, like she'd been holding her breath the entire time. Well, that got real. The audience chuckled softly, relieved laughter, the kind that breaks tension gently without mocking the moment. Sunny wiped a discreet tear from the corner of her eye, her voice steadier now. I didn't mean to turn this into whatever this became. Hugh shook his head. You didn't do anything wrong. You were honest. Sunny let out a small, surprised laugh. Honest, maybe. Graceful. Not so much. Hugh smiled softly. Honesty is grace, Sunny. Even when it's messy. Something about that line made her smile. Small, tired, but real. The energy in the studio shifted again, but this time toward warmth. Understanding. Healing. Hugh had not only diffused the conflict, he had redirected it towards something deeper and more human. The audience sat forward, captivated, watching two people navigate the fragile landscape between hurt and hope. Whoopi exhaled deeply. Well, Hugh, I don't think you came here expecting a therapy session. Hugh chuckled. I'll admit, this wasn't on the rundown. The audience burst into laughter, relieving the last of the tension. Sunny took a breath. Hugh, thank you. He nodded. You don't owe me thanks. You've been carrying something heavy for a long time. You deserve a place to put some of it down. She blinked quickly, overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. The cameras caught the moment, a raw, unfiltered exchange between two people who had unexpectedly collided over morality, loyalty, pain, forgiveness, and the unspoken fears everyone carries in private. The director signaled they were moments from outro. The atmosphere remained thick with emotion, but the confrontation had melted into something unforgettable. The audience applauded, slow at first, then building into a warm, roaring wave. Not for drama, not for spectacle, but because they had witnessed something painfully human, beautifully honest, and impossible to forget. As the show wrapped, social media exploded instantly. Clips of the tense exchange flooded feeds. Viewers debated morality versus loyalty, compassion versus accountability. Fans praised Hugh's empathy. Others defended Sunny's pain. The moment went viral, not because it was dramatic, but because it was real. Inside the studio, Sunny approached Hugh softly off camera. Her voice trembled. I hope I didn't attack you. You didn't, Hugh said warmly. You opened up. That takes courage. She looked at him with newfound respect. And in that moment, the world remembered that behind every debate, every clash, every televised argument, there are real people with unseen wounds trying to make sense of their stories. As the lights dimmed, the audience still buzzing, the emotional weight of the exchange lingered like a shadow and a glow all at once. And now, viewers watching from home felt that same stirring. Before you go, tell me, whose side were you on? Hugh's belief in compassion or Sunny's belief in moral accountability? Drop your opinion in the comments. I want to hear your take on this emotional clash. And make sure you subscribe to Talk Narrative for more explosive, cinematic celebrity confrontations just like this one.